request for us to talk to their staff. I've been able to do that. At this point, I want to invite Mr. Ronald Opolo to give us an opening prayer, and we immediately start the day. Ronald?
Thank you, Commissioner. Let's humble ourselves and pray. Kind and loving Father, we want to thank you for this day. We want to thank you for the gift of life. We want to thank you for this opportunity to learn and to be able to make a contribution to the public service pension fund that is starting in July. Father, we pray for wisdom, understanding, even as we listen to what we are going to be told, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Thank you so much, Ronald, for that, and that opens our day. As said, great. Thank you so much, members. Welcome to our second sensitization today. I'll be the one taking to present through the presentation. My name is Amori Moses Sebi. I'm an Assistant Commissioner, Human Resource Management at the Ministry of Public Service, the Department of Compensation, Pensions Management Division. And as we're aware, government has reformed the public service pension scheme from what the current scheme, which is the non-contributory scheme, to a contributory scheme. And this was through the Public Service Pensions Act, which was passed into law in the year 2025. And all is now being done to finalize the process, and we're all moving into this. So we're going to have a presentation, and then we'll have a moment for questions. Everyone, but we have a button for question and answers there. So I request those who have any questions to kindly share the questions in the section of questions and answers, and my colleagues will be able to respond to these questions even as the presentation goes on. So I'm going to give you the overview of the public service pension fund, the reform, and we're going to see what this reform has for us. Some of you, as I said, may be aware about this reform already. So key features, we're going to look at the features of the current scheme, the public service pension scheme, the one we're currently implementing, which we're going to refer to the old scheme, the rules and the challenges. Then we're going to diagnose the problem. We want to appreciate, first of all, what led to this reform. Why did we have to reform this pension scheme? Of course, from the features and the challenges, we'll be able to appreciate that indeed this reform has a challenge. This current scheme has some challenges, and the reform has come in handy to try to diagnose the problem and provide solutions. So let's also look at the pension reform design expectations, pension reform options and reform objectives. Then we'll look at the major reforms. What are the main things changing? And you realize now, in the course of our presentation, that not everything is changing. Some things are going to change, and we are going to clearly take you through what is changing. And more importantly, we also want you to look at the benefits. This is a people-centered reform. It was a reform for the better of every public officer who is going to retire. And we're going to also take you through the benefits of this reform and implications of this reform. What are the implications of this reform? And more importantly, we're also going to look at the implementation plan. So we are all stakeholders in this, and we expect your keen attention, and we'll be able to know what our role is in this reform. The main objects of this presentation are to highlight the features of the current public service pension fund and the rationale for the reform, why we're reforming, and also to demonstrate the reform options and design objectives, to highlight the features of the reformed public service pension scheme, and to demonstrate the implications of the reform as well as benefits of a reformed public service pension scheme, and to highlight the pension reform roadmap and implementation plan, where we are and what is next. We all need to be ready for this. In a way of introduction, I was saying the current public service pension fund is an unfunded. The current public service pension scheme is an unfunded and non-contributory scheme that is funded through government budget from the consolidated fund. What this means is that currently all our budget for pensions and gratuity is from the consolidated fund. Because it's an unfunded scheme, no one makes a contribution to this. The scheme was established in 1946 by the colonial administration to cater for the retirement and social security needs of employees in the public service. So this is a very old scheme. It started in 1946. And provision of pension to public servants is enshrined in Article 254, subsection 1, 2, 3, and 3 of the Constitution. So pension is provided by law. And this is even in the Constitution. I've mentioned the articles, and you'll be able to get time and look through that article. So it's provided by law. And then the Pensions Act Cap 285 provides for the rules of the scheme. So this pension is, as I said, provided by law, and even there's an Act of Parliament, the Pensions Act, which has been operationalizing this law. So what is the design of the reformed public service pension scheme? The public service pension scheme operates on a defined benefits basis. What does defined benefits mean? It means that this is a scheme whereby your benefits are defined by a formula. What that means is that when you retire, at the time of your retirement, your benefits will be computed using a formula. And that's what defined benefit scheme is all about. We also have defined contribution scheme. A defined contribution scheme is where you simply get what you put in plus the performance of your savings and all this, because savings are invested. But our scheme is called a defined benefit scheme, meaning that benefits will continue to be determined by a formula. Benefits will be dependent on salary retirement and pensionable service, meaning that we still look at what is your salary retirement. Your last salary just before retiring is what is used to compute your benefits, and your pensionable service. How long have you worked under the pensionable establishment? So your date of joining service up to when you retire is what ultimately determines how much benefits you receive. And then another aspect is also the benefits are guaranteed. This is part of the reform, is one to guarantee benefits. You will later see that currently our benefits under the current scheme are not guaranteed, but under the new reform, benefits will be guaranteed. So pension, under the current formula, pension is equal to salary retirement, which is annual salary multiplied by length of service over 500. So we look at the period of service in months, and we also look at the length, the salary retirement, the annual. So these are very important parameters in determining, and this is divided by 500. And the minimum qualifying period for pension is 10 years. So for you to qualify for pension, you should have worked for at least 10 years. That is why even when it comes to recruitment, for you to be recruited on a permanent and pensionable basis, we should be sure that you're going to work for at least 10 years. That is why at retirement, we limit like for those who retire at 60, you can only join the permanent and pensionable scheme. You can only be recruited to that when you are 50 or below 50. That's to ensure that you qualify for the pension in the course of your work. So what are the weaknesses in the design of the reform scheme? The current scheme has challenges under the talked, and that is why we are reforming the scheme, because one of the weaknesses in the design was it is non-contributory. As we all know, we don't make any contribution to the pension we're earning when we retire. And government provides this 100% through the consolidated fund, through its budgets. And this is a non-contributory scheme, but government has a lot of competing priorities. Every sector of government depends on the consolidated fund for its resources, be it roads, be it water and everything. So the pension sector, the non-contributory one still goes to the consolidated fund just like any other, and whatever is available is what is given. So that is one of the weaknesses. The final salary DB arrangement limits ability to restructure remuneration levels. You see, our scheme is that your pension is calculated by your final salary. You could have joined service as an officer and you rise through the ranks and you retire as a commissioner. What that means is by the time you retire, they will look at your length of service when you joined as an officer up to when you retired as a commissioner, but the salary which will be used is the salary retirement. Other companies, other institutions use what they call a career average. They want to look at what is the average salary you earned, but ours is final salary. Then early retirement permitted without reduction in pensions payable. You see, our scheme also allows for early retirement. When you're 45 years and you've served for 10 years, you can apply for early retirement. Or when you've served for 20 years, you also qualify and you can apply for early retirement. And when you apply for early retirement, there's no reduction in your pensions payable. You have the full pension, which will be computed, will be given to you. So that is another aspect of this the scheme. Commutation terms, 15 out of 1 plus reversion to full pension after 15 years. Now, our current pension scheme is that when you retire, you have 2 options. One option is your benefits will be computed, and these benefits, once fully computed, can be given to you as an annuity. And annuity means the monthly pension you earn. So I mean that once your benefits are being computed, it will now be broken down into an annuity, into a monthly pension. And this is for 15 years. So meaning that when you choose this option, all your benefits will be computed and broken down into an annuity. This is option 1. Option 2 is where you get an advance. An advance is what we call a commuted pension gratuity. Now, for those who offer that option, what happens is once your benefits are being computed for 15 years, 1/3 of those benefits is given to you as a commuted pension gratuity, commonly known as gratuity, but the full name is commuted pension gratuity. And this is given to you at the time of retirement, immediately when you retire. And the remaining benefits is now what is turned into an annuity. It's further broken down into monthly payments, monthly pension payments, which is paid to you. And the scheme factors in pension for 15 years, meaning that once you retire, say at 60 years, you go on to the monthly pension, what we call an annuity, and you get this for 15 years. However, the scheme also provides for additional for pension to be continued for those who will be alive after exhausting the 15 years. What this means is that when a pensioner has retired, say at 60, and by 75, they exhaust they will have exhausted their benefits. However, government care takes the additional liability to continue paying them, and at the moment, we also pay them what they call a full pension. A full pension is that pension whereby your pension calculation is now reverted to as if you never got an advance. Remember, currently many people are opting for the advance and the reduced monthly pension. However, when you make 15 years, we shall now transited to what you call a full pension, whereby your pension is computed as if you got as if you never got an advance. So in simple terms, your pension, monthly pension becomes higher. Now, this full pension is not provided by law. No law provides for this, but simply a practice that has been happening. And for those in the old scheme, this is going to continue. But however, there's no law that provides that when a person has been on pension for 15 years, he or she needs to go on full pension. But since this is a practice, this practice is going to continue. No venting or portability of benefits, hindering job mobility. At the moment, you can't move your benefits from one scheme to another, no flexibility in benefits payments. So this is basically what we are having in the current scheme. So what's the institutional structure? No provision in the Constitution, no management structure, operation, or management of the current pension, public service pension scheme. You can see that there is no provision on management structures. Of course, the permanent secretary, Minister of Public Service, is the Pensions Authority, and there's a department in charge of pension management in the Ministry of Public Service, which is charged with the responsibility of managing together with the votes. And all of us are aware that pension money was decentralized to votes to the ministries, departments, and local governments from 2019. However, this ministry has the mandate to provide the policy directive and supervised management of this pension. But you can see there's still no management structure. There's no board which this team reports to. There's no board that oversees this. So that's current institutional structure. Lead to explicit protection of employees' pension rights. Employees may exit without benefits, and those entitled have to depend on the treasury. What does this mean? There's lead to, as they say, there's lead to explicit protection, is that under the current pension scheme, you may exit the scheme, your benefits are not guaranteed. One is, it depends on the mode of exit. For example, those who may offer to resign, those who may abscond, or those who are dismissed before their retirement actually are not entitled to a benefit. So I mean that these benefits are not guaranteed. So additionally, the benefits are dependent on the treasury. So as I said earlier, every year we go to finance, Ministry of Finance, with a budget for pension and for committed pension gratuity of those who are retiring. Why we do this is because we don't have any funds set aside to do this. So we are 100% reliant on the consolidated fund. So we all know the challenges of the consolidated fund. One is every government service comes from the consolidated fund. The funding comes there. So there are so many competing services government offers which need funding from the consolidated fund. So it depends on what treasury can also provide, as they have other entities that they also need to provide for. Absence of a comprehensive framework, governance framework. Retirees are the mercy of the various government institutions. Currently, you can see there is no comprehensive governance framework. There are no AGMs. I think there's never been an AGM held for pensions and gratuity, apart from the frequency installations we hold, the pre-retirement trainings, but there's no governance framework at the moment. There's no AGM, there are no board members, and there's no one who represents the members. And so that's one of the challenges we are facing. Lack of enforcement on disclosure and governance, except occasional special audits by Auditor General's Office. I think we all know that, of course, we are all aware all MDAs and local governments are audited, both internally, but also by the Auditor General on an annual basis. But also, the enforcement of some disclosures. For example, we occasionally have the special audits by Auditor General. I think about 2 years ago we had that, and a lot was discovered. And we discovered some pensioners who have long died, whose benefits should have been stored, but they continue getting benefits. So you can see that's one of the challenges with our current institutional structure. So financing, pension costs, benefit costs are made from the consolidated fund as a pay-as-you-go basis. I've explained this. What this means again is that every end of year, every year we make a budget request to finance for consideration. And you can see these costs have to 100% be made from the consolidated fund. So this has been one of the challenges as well. Weakness in financial planning, monitoring, and controls. No independent audit, as I said, except for the occasional forensic audits, and no regular actuarial evaluations. You can see the last actuarial evaluation was done in 2011 and now done in 2022. And this actuarial evaluation, the period was about 11 years. And this is too long for an actuarial evaluation. And you later realize that in the current arrangement, actuarial evaluations will be done every 3 years. So this is one of the reasons why this had to be reformed. Projected significant increases in benefits expenditure as public service pension scheme liabilities mature. So you can also see that the projections in liability are totally increasing. Every year we have a request for pension. Now with an addition with the salary increments which are coming, some cadres have already been enhanced, and this also has a direct implication on their pension. So this has continued to bring in additional liabilities. As I speak, government still owes so many pensioners money in form of pension arrears, and these are becoming very significant as we move on. Other challenges, unfairness and equity of the pension to the population. Benefits range from 5,000 per month to 26 million. Currently, according to our pensions payroll, the lowest pension is earning 5,000 shillings. And the highest pension is earning 26 million shillings. And that is a bit of the unfairness. Pension gratuity account for 0.73% of GDP, yet only 0.21% of the population are covered. Now, as you may all be aware, pension is social security, and even the informal sector deserves social security. And you can see Ugandan population is now about 45.9 million people. And of these 45.9 million people, how many are covered under our formal pension, social security? Very, very little. And yet the amount of money which is drawn from the consolidated fund to cater for the social needs, social security of these people is quite significant, as the figures are showing. And this is one of the challenges we have seen with this pension arrangement. Another challenge is the affordability question. Affordability with the financing capacity of the economy, resulting to budget shortfalls and ultimately non-payment or delayed payment of benefits. As I said, we depend on the consolidated fund for paying pension benefits. The consolidated fund also depends on revenue collection. How are they collecting money? And I think we all know that Uganda Revenue Authority collects money, which is put in the consolidated fund, and this is what is spent by government to fund all its activities, pension inclusive. And sometimes, many a times, we get shortfalls, right from revenue collections and all this and that. And this ultimately sometimes results into shortfalls also in pension payment, which ultimately may lead to a delayed pension payment or ultimately no pension payment. So these are some of the challenges about the affordability. Because pension being a right, you're entitled to your pension according to parameters, and pension is guaranteed till death, depending on how you retire. For those who retire under the mandatory arrangement, you're supposed to get your pension until you die. So this is one of the challenges. The question is, how affordable is the current scheme? Later, we'll see how the pension liability has been rising over the years. And that means that if nothing is done, we shall go to a point whereby the affordability question will continue rising. We'll get to a point whereby government may not afford to pay pensions. And this has happened in other countries before, where government has failed to afford pension. We have seen that even including in developed countries. We have seen countries whereby they opt to increase their retirement age because they cannot meet their pension liability at that particular point in time. So that availability question is one of the big challenges where we think we need to move from the pay-go scheme we're currently on to a contributory scheme so that we guarantee that benefits. And then another sustainability caused by parametric reforms, another factor such as pay reform, growing size of the public service, and the longevity. Now, the three factors I've mentioned have a very significant impact on the pensions budget. Number one is the pay reform. We're all aware government is committed to reforming pay for all public officers, and some public officers have already benefited. Medical workers have already benefited from the pay reform. From this, and we are aware that our pension is a formula-based pension where it is based on your salary at retirement. What that means is if I retire when my salary has been enhanced, then my pension will be paid based on the enhanced salary, not based on my previous salary. So this is very important that we all know that as we reform the pay, it's going to have a significant impact on the pension budget. And when you reach a point where the entire service will have been reformed, where everyone will have benefited from the salary enhancement, that will have a very, very big implication on the pension. And now to raise the question of sustainability, shall we be able to sustain the growing budgets of pension? Another aspect which poses a challenge on sustainability is the growing size of the public service. Currently, the public service is about 350,000 people. About 2 weeks ago, Ministry of Public Service released the status of the human resource in the Ugandan public service. And you can see we still have a lot, with these 350,000 people, we still have a lot of vacancies. Many local governments, many central government ministries and departments are not operating at 100%, meaning that there's so many vacancies which are not yet filled. So the problem we're talking about is the current filled positions in public service. What that means is, as we also fill more positions, as we recruit more staff to join the public service, it also increases the pension burden. Every staff who is recruited into government automatically has a qualifying pension after some time. So as a pension liability, so the liability starts accumulating, meaning that the more people join service, the bigger the problem. So it raises the issue of sustainability. And significant, another issue about sustainability is the issue of longevity. We all know the life expectancy of Ugandans have continued to rise significantly, and particularly pensioners. The life expectancy of a pensioner currently, according to our actual evaluations, a pensioner now lives on average for 19.3 years. What does that mean? That means that when you retire, you are going to be on pension averagely for 19.3 years. You see, our pension design was initially that people will live for 15 years. Now people are living way beyond that. So as life expectancy increases, it brings into question the aspect of sustainability. So the issue of sustainability becomes a factor here. So this is a very big challenge because pension is provided by a constitution. We don't want to run a scheme that stops by providing a pension by law, but it needs to be practical. We want people to be able to operate. So we want a sustainable pension scheme where people are sure about their benefits when they retire. Another challenge is the entitlement to pension under this current scheme is not guaranteed. As I said earlier, in the current arrangement, not everyone gets a pension. You must retire under pensionable circumstances. Now, there are scenarios I talked about earlier. For example, if you're dismissed before you retire, if you're dismissed from service, you forfeit all your benefits, meaning that your current pension is not guaranteed. Again, if you leave service under other arrangements, for example, if you resign, resignation attracts no benefits from the pension scheme. If you abscond, I hope all know what abscondment is. If you abscond from service, you again don't get your benefits. So these are the benefits. This is not new. I think a number of investigations have been done. Sometimes when people retire, we have issues whereby sometimes we don't have money. You may find a local government has retired some staff, but they don't have the money to pay. And the whole circle of requesting for additional money and the forth and back communication continues. That means that the payment of this pensioner is delayed. And yet ultimately this pensioner deserves their pension at retirement because pension has a reason why it is given and they need to access it. So that is another challenge. Then the growing size of the workforce and the increasing public expenditure on wage, pension and salary and pension presents unfairness to the population. As I said, this current year, if you look at the pension liability, pension, wage, and first of all, wage, pension, and gratuity account for more than 10 trillion shillings. How much does government collect? This current financial year, I think local revenue is at least at about 30 trillion shillings. This is for the current financial, which is ending in about a week or two. Now, of these 30 trillion shillings, the current workforce and pensioners are taking 10 trillion shillings. That means about 1/3 of our local revenue is being consumed by people who are working for public service now and those who are retired. So the unfairness is that what is the population of pensioners and what's the population of the current workforce? And what's the population of Ugandans? So that is the level of unfairness we're talking about. So what are the reform propositions? So that is the problem. I've been trying to bring us to speed with what the problem is. And as I said, every reform in government is occasioned by a problem and comes to solve a problem. So it was only fair we start by looking at the problem. I believe that by now we have a fair understanding of what the problem is and the magnitude of the problem. So it's a very huge problem and ultimately it needs solutions. And that's why government came and reformed the scheme. So government, as a result, undertook to reform the scheme through 1, institutional reforms mainly to address the governance issues by establishing an independent and in brackets administrative and financial public service pension fund. As I said, this public service pension fund is going to be independent. It is not going to be, first of all, it will not depend on the consolidated fund, but again, it is going to be run by a board of trustees. As I talk, we have the inaugural board of trustees have been appointed and inducted, and they will start their work on the 1st of July, 2026. So the board is ready to start. So that's one of the things, propositions, and this has been actualized. The board is ready and simply waiting for the 1st of July to start their work as an independent institution which has come to address this issue. So we looked at the governance issues and we believe that by reforming this, those issues will no longer be a hindrance to our pension service. Secondly, carrying out parametric reforms to address the long-term fiscal sustainability of the scheme. We will later look on what is going to change for us to address these issues. So this reform is going to has come with a lot of proposals of how all the issues we brought in as challenges are going to be addressed. So the reforms, how do I address the long-term sustainability of the scheme? So this public service pension fund is going to be a long-term solution to this problem. And we expect that those issues of inadequate funds or no funds will not resurface because the fund will take care of the funds and be readily available to make payments for those who qualify for them. Fiscal sustainability, long-term to be said to be attacked by parametric reforms and pre-funding. We're all aware that a funded pension scheme comes with contributions from members. And this reform means that we shall start making contributions. Your employer, and for us all, our employer is Government of Uganda. So Government of Uganda will make a contribution of 10% of your salary to the scheme. And also you'll be required to make a contribution of 5% to the scheme, because now each member's contribution, when I refer to members, I refer to those who will be enrolled on the public service pension scheme fund. So each of you will be making a contribution of 15% of your salary into the scheme. Of the 15%, 10% will be made by government, 5% will be made by you. But the arrangement to have this, so this will be done, 5% will be deducted from your salary and then sent to the fund for the fund to take custody and also invest for the long-term sustainability. So as I said, for long-term sustainability, the fund is not going to keep the money, but they're going to invest the money so that the money also gains value over time, so that by the time we retire, the fund will be able to afford your retirement. The affordability question to achieve through parametric pre-funding and presidential investment. As I said, one of the mandates of the fund is, besides receiving your fund, is to invest your funds. We all know that funds kept idle doesn't appreciate, and yet money loses value. So to address that issue, the Public Service Pension Fund has the mandate to ensure that the funds are invested. And as the funds are invested, we will be able to ensure sustainability, that even in the long run, the funds are able to afford paying benefits to members. Adequacy of benefits, social security guarantees to be achieved through parametric reforms, pre-funding, prudential benefit, and adoption of governance principles. So as I said, from this investment, we expect to have sufficient funds to pay every member who will qualify. We shall all qualify for our benefits at different times, but once we qualify, the fund will be able to timely pay us, as we shall see through the arrangements have been made. Prudential management and investment to be achieved through adoption of good governance principles and pre-funding. So we also want to adopt good governance principles here. Again, we often get questions about safety of your monies, but I can tell you that a lot has changed in the pension sector. First and foremost, there's now an authority that supervises all pension sector in Uganda. That is UBRA, Uganda Retirement Benefits Regulatory Authority, which is charged with the mandate of supervising and foreseeing and who provides an oversight role over all pension funds, the Public Service Pension Fund inclusive. So this is one of the approaches that have been done to ensure there's good governance, but also to represent you as members. We are going to have a board of trustees who will be acting in the interest of the members. So this board of trustees are not just appointed from a single ministry, they're not just appointed from a single entity, but the Act provides for where the members can be appointed from. And again, the process of appointing members is now very vigorous. One is the Minister of Public Responsible for Public Service is responsible for appointing, but these appointed members undergo vigorous vetting. First of all, they must undergo a test, a fit and proper test by UBRA, and this entails looking at their financial credibility, whether they qualify to hold these pension funds, because this pension funds is going to be a lot of money. So we really need that prudential approach. Like, we want to really ensure that the board is up to the task. And this board is also vetted by cabinet. So you can see from the minister nominating members, it goes to UBRA, it goes to cabinet. So they have to go through all this process before they can actually become members board. They can be join the board. So this is to ensure good governance and to handle some of the challenges which we have had with some pension funds before. Design. Just a minute. So the design expectations, be modern and progressive, so to enforce its objectives as financial and social security reform. So want to be progressive. We are in touch. We have African public service funds, like we have all these other countries are doing this. So we keep modern. We have summits which are organized in Africa and worldwide. So we're progressively in touch and trying to benchmark, trying to look at other schemes. And this scheme itself, this public service pension fund was benchmarked both within the region, in Africa, and worldwide. So this is just to ensure that we are modern and we're not left behind. Another design expectation is to protect members' rights and provide reasonable benefit expectations. So we also want to ensure that the members' benefits is protected, and also, as I said, the current scheme provides a benefit, but there's no minimum. But one of the design expectations of this reform is to introduce a minimum, and indeed a minimum benefit has been introduced at 25%, meaning that any person who retires, their benefits, their pension should not be less than 25% of their salary. This is one of the reforms that this scheme has brought in. Then it results into a reasonable cost burden that is transparent, largely predictable, and can be carefully monitored and controlled. So there will be transparency in this scheme. The fund will be able to have an AGM every year. So members will be able to know how their funds are performing. The financial health of the fund will also always be done. So nothing will be done, and this fund is going to be audited. The fund structure has a position for internal auditors, so there will be internal auditors who regularly audit, but also again, also the Auditor General still maintains the mandate of annually auditing this fund. So there will be a lot of transparency. Ensure members meet a share of the cost of any improvement to benefit through regular. So what we are trying to ensure is that members should, through your contribution, you also be able to meet part of the share of the cost of the improvements. As I said, your 5% contributions will be able to, and then the 10% which government will make on your behalf will be able to ensure the sustainability. Be consistent with the socio-economic fabrics of the country. As you all know, that also the monies, our economy is growing, there's inflation, money loses value. So again, as we reform this, we also ensure that there will be, your pension will be revalidated over time against inflation, that is price. So when there's inflation, every year there will be an inflation aspect. But again, also the performance of the fund will also be used to revalidate your pension. Be comparable to other similar public service schemes in Africa. As I told you, we're a bit of a latecomer into the reform. Our neighbors, Kenya, have been in this reform for a while now. Tanzania is on this reform. So, and most of African countries now. Recently, we had the African Public Service, African Pension Summit, Retirement Summit, which was held in Mauritius. And we're able to see from other countries how far they have gone. West African countries, South Africa, even East Africa. Kenya is one of the models now in this reform. So we want to be comparable. We have now joined the reform. As they say, better late than never. Most of our other countries could have joined before us, but we have joined the reform and we are now. And one of the beauties is that we have had people to learn from. We have done benchmarking studies in the region, as I've said before. We have done benchmarking studies in Africa and also outside Africa. So this act is comparable. It has been comprehensively done, and we believe that we should be able to add the pension schemes within the region and Africa. Be simple, easy to understand, and appreciated by its members. So this reform is quite simple. It may sound complex at the start, but we believe that this is very easy to understand. And there's nothing hidden in this reform. Everything about this reform is being brought to light, and that's why we're sensitizing you for you to understand. And we have our HRs on ground there who have been sensitized, the responsible officers, who should be also points of contact to further communicate. But this is easy, and we also have be able to, from time to time, provide any additional sensitization if need be. It will also contribute to increase the national savings. Of course, when pensioners are able to save, then nationally we're also able to save. Our savings increase, and we all know the implications of additional savings to the economy. It means that those people who save are able to purchase, are able to pay taxes, and that's how our economy will grow. So through this reform, the national savings are significantly going to increase. It will also create minimum disruptions and a smooth transition. We have heard of people trying to change their age at the time of retirement because they're scared, they're worried of the disruption. They know someone has been working for the last 20, 30, 40 years. And at the time of retirement, they have to get off salary. And sometimes they're worried about the disruption. Will I get my pension in time? Will my pension be significant and all this? So the reform expectation is to ensure that as you transit from the active service into pension, there should be minimum disruptions and a smooth transition. And then minimize the risk of legal or moral comebacks to government. We also know that pension being provided by law. If government is unable to provide what is provided by law, it can bring legal and moral questions on government. Government has promised a pension, and if it's unable to deliver on the promise, it brings a question of moral, but also brings a legal challenge. And one of the reform expectations is that through this reform, we want to be able to meet the constitutional provision of providing a pension to those who retire under pensionable circumstances. So solution to the scheme challenges, as I said, the Parliament enacted the Public Service Pensions Act, which was signed into law in 2025. So the law is now operational. This law commenced on the 1st of February. The minister signed an instrument which commenced. So the Public Service Pension Act 2025 is now operational. It commenced on 1st of February 2026. However, operations of the fund is now, the board of directors have been appointed, they have been inducted, and they start the work on 1st of July 2026. So from that, the board will be fully operational, the fund will be fully operational, and some staff will be seconded to kickstart this. Just to also remind you that we're starting, but there's a lot of work for the fund to do. First of all, we need to existingly develop for the fund, and all those who are eligible will have to be enrolled onto the fund system, and that requires us having accurate and clean data. So we'll have a role to play. So it is my belief that all our data is as clean as possible, and every public officer being a stakeholder in this reform must ensure that they have accurate data, accurate information. Your date of birth should be very accurate when you join service and all this, because those are the parameters on which your benefits will be computed. So you should be interested to ensure that your records are actually accurately captured. The Act also provides for the establishment of the Public Service Pension Fund and the Public Service Pension Scheme, governance, functions, organization, and management of the fund, the collection of contributions, and payments of retirement benefits by the fund. So the fund has a mandate of collecting contributions. As I said, each member will be contributing 15%, and this contribution will be sent to the fund. So they have a mandate of collecting these contributions, but also it will be the mandate of the fund to pay these benefits once due. As I say, we shall not all be due at the same time, but depending on the various parameters, those who clock mandatory retirement age will qualify for their benefits, and they'll be able to access and to be the responsibility of the fund to ensure that they're paid. And then the investment of the monies of the fund and other. So as I said, once the fund is operational, we're not going to keep your contributions, but we're going to invest them. The fund is going to invest them so that the fund can grow, and so that as you realize that most times what you'll be able to benefit in terms of your pension will be bigger than what you contributed. So the difference, the deficit from that will be able to be handled from the performance of the fund, the money fund, the fund will make. But again, also government is the sponsor of this fund. Being a sponsor, government will also be able to, has also undertaken to handle any deficit that may arise from this. His Excellency the President of the Republic of Uganda signed into this bill on the 10th of April 2025. So that's when the bill was signed into law. So the law was passed in 2025, but it commenced on 1st of February 2026. The Public Service Pension Act number 5 of 2025 became effective, as I said, through the Public Service Pension Fund Act Commencement Instrument number 1 of 2026. That's the instrument that commenced this act. This act repeals the Pensions Act, Cap 89, establishes the Public Service Pension Fund. The Public Service Pension Scheme provides for collection of contribution, investments, and payment of retirement benefits. So this means that by coming into force of this act, the Pensions Act of Cap 89 has now been repealed. And this act has also established the Public Service Pension Fund as a legal entity. The scheme and also the fund will now be responsible for collection of contributions, investment, and payment of benefits. So the act consists of 5 parts and 2 schedules. Part 1 deals with commencement of the act, interpretation of the keywords, and phase and application of the act and objectives of the act. So this was when it commenced and all this. And as I said, this commencement was 1st of February 2026. Part 2 establishes the Public Service Pension Fund, functions of the Public Service Pension Fund, source of monies, Board of Trustees, its functions, procedures, and office of the Chief Executive Officer and other staff of the fund. Besides the Board of Trustees, this fund is also going to have a Chief Executive Officer and other funds. So the fund also has a structure, and staff are going to initially be seconded. Eventually, the board will recruit staff. The Board of Trustees will recruit staff for the fund. Part 3 establishes a scheme providing for membership of the scheme, registration, cancellation of membership, provides for mandatory contributions, investment of contributions, and payments of benefits. So Part 3 talks about that. You'll be able to access that. So what are the key features of the new Public Service Pension Scheme? The name of the scheme, the name is the Public Service Pension Scheme, and the scheme design is a defined benefit, which is a contributory defined benefit. Defined benefit, as I said earlier, but for those who have joined late, defined benefit means that your benefits are by a formula. Your benefits are formula-based, meaning that even under the new scheme, when you retire, we shall still be able to compute your benefits using a formula. And the formula will still be dependent on your length of service and your salary at retirement. So those have been maintained. So this is a defined benefit scheme. Just for better understanding, we have also defined contribution scheme like NSSF. NSSF also is a distribution scheme which also collects contributions from members and also pays back to them. But NSSF is a defined contribution. NSSF is a provident fund. What NSSF does is when you retire, they give you money as a lump sum, meaning that whatever amount of money you'll have accumulated on NSSF at retirement, all the money is given to you. But ours is a pension scheme where we give you money in form of an annuity, meaning that we want to ensure that you get your money monthly instead of giving everything to you. And why we do that is, I think we all know, research has shown that when monies are given as a lump sum, people misappropriate these monies, or sometimes they invest these monies and investments go bad, and they become desperate again in retirement. And your retirement, Social Security, the whole idea is for you to have a very comfortable retirement. So the annuity at least guarantees that even when you retire, you have that monthly pension coming every month. So that is the scheme design coverage. This covers the traditional public service, the teaching service, the local government service, and employees of the other public service. Now for the first 3, that means the ministries, departments, and local governments, including the teaching service, teachers are all covered here. So all people in this category will have to move to the new scheme. Now, this scheme provides membership for employees of the other public service. We're well aware currently the other public service, most of them subscribe to NSSF. However, this scheme has provided what we call optional membership for them, meaning that if there is any new other public that comes up, they can choose to enroll on the Public Service Pension Fund instead of the other schemes, or employees of other public service can also choose to enroll here. For those who are just joining, they are allowed, the law provides for them to enroll onto this scheme. Membership is compulsory for all employees in the public service, all newly appointed employees in the public service, but it is optional for those with less than 5 years to retire at the inception of the scheme. What does this mean? For the people in the mainstream public service, your membership into this scheme is not optional. It is compulsory for all of us, except those who are left with 5 years to retire. Now, those who are left with 5 years to retire will have an opportunity to choose whether to remain in the old scheme, which was a non-contributory scheme, or to move into this contributory scheme. So at an appropriate time, votes will be guided. Sensitization will be provided for those who are left with 5 years to make the decision, which will be documented, and there they will have to choose. But this option is only limited to those who will be left with less than 5 years. Now, for my brothers and sisters out there who are more than 5 years, kindly note that you'll not have the option. Yours will be a compulsory move from the old scheme into the contributory scheme. I hope that's very clear. So the option is only for those left with less than 5 years to retire. So exemption, who cannot be part of this scheme? One is members of parliament. Members of parliament have the parliamentary pension scheme, which is only catering for them. So they don't have to join the exempted from this. Members of the UPDF. The UPDF has its own scheme, so they will not be part of the public service pension fund. 3, employees in the other public service subscribing to already existing retirement benefit schemes. Now, we have employees in other public service already subscribing. For example, most of the employees in the other public service are subscribing to NSSF. We have Bank of Uganda, which has its own scheme. So those people, the staff under Bank of Uganda, will continue to subscribe to their scheme. Makerere University also has a pension scheme. Those ones will continue to subscribe, so they don't need to convert to this scheme. Employees in the public service who at the commencement of this act have 5 years left to retire shall elect whether to transition to the fund or remain in the old rule. I talked about this. So those who have less than 5 years will have an option. So they can choose to be exempted if they want to, or they can choose to move to the fund. The choice is theirs, but as I said, we shall continue the sensitization at an appropriate time. They will be sensitized on the implications of remaining in the old scheme and moving to the new scheme, and they have total liberty to choose where they want to belong. Employees retired from the public service before the commencement of the act. Now, we all know we have pensioners, we have more than 90,000 pensioners currently. Now, these pensioners cannot be enrolled on the scheme for simple reason that this scheme is contributory, and those who retired before the commencement of this act never contributed. So because of this, employees of those who retired before the commencement of this act will never be part of this reform. Judicial officers are also not catered for in this reform. Why? Because judicial officers now have a separate scheme. So because of that, they are not part of this. Employees of the security organizations also have a scheme, so they are not part of, they will be exempted from this reform. Any other category that may be exempted by any other applicable law. As I said, Parliament from time to time makes laws and will have the powers to exempt any other category through any law, through a law if deemed necessary. So any law can also be passed to exempt additional people, but for now, these are the people who have been exempted. So what are the key features? And let's take in interest. The key features, accrual rate. The accrual rate, previously, the accrual rate used to be 2%. This was reformed to 2.4. But the reforms also changing the accrual rate to 2.0%. What this means is that you accrue about 2% of your annual salary into your pension every year. So the formula, we're aware that the formula of the current scheme, the denominator of the current scheme is 500, but this is going to change to 600. for the public service pension fund. So meaning that our accrual rate will now drop from 2.4 to 2.0. Commutation, it maintains commutation of committed pension gratuity at the rate of 1 out of 3 for 15 years. So these are 3.1 out of 3 is the equivalent to 33.333 recurring. So meaning that your total benefits committed, your total benefits will be computed, and 1/3 of this will be given to you as committed pensions gratuity. Annuity maintains a provision of lifetime pension. So what this means is that under the current new pension reform, you still be able to get your monthly pension up to the point of death. And the parents still remain that for those who will die before the 15 years of pension, the remaining years of your 15 will be able to be given to your beneficiary through an estate account from the estate account. But those who will live beyond the 15 years will be able, now pension will be provided until they die. Meaning that if you'll be lucky to live for more than 15 years, maybe 20 years, 30, 40, we shall continue to pay, the fund will continue to pay you until you die. That's why we mean by maintains provision for lifetime pension. So your pension will not be stopped. However, you will need to prove that you're alive. Currently, our pensioners fill a life certificate form, and this is to prove that they're still alive. And we have seen some challenges with this arrangement, in that some people are now forging life certificates. Even people who are dead are still being reported as people who are alive. One of the innovations of the scheme is to introduce a biometric. So we're going to have a biometric proof of life, where all pensioners will have to log by biometric to prove that they're still alive, and we believe this will solve the problem of forgeries of life certificates. It still maintains a formula. It still will be a formula based on last salary and length of service. Contribution, it introduces a contribution rate of 15%. Your employer will give 10%, and the employee gives 15%. And this contribution, both your employer gives and the one you give, is all your contribution. The employer is doing this contribution on your behalf. It is not your employer's. It is not for the employer, but it is yours. So this will be on your behalf. Indexation. As I said, pension is supposed to be validated and is also provided by law. So it's a maintain periodic adjustment of pension based on inflation and performance of the fund. Meaning that when you're on pension, annually your money will be losing value, but this will be adjusted. Your pension will be adjusted against inflation, but additionally, it's also be adjusted against the performance of the fund. As you know, the fund will be investing your contributions. So any good performance from the fund will be reflected in terms of indexation of your pension. Retirement age and circumstances for retirement. One, we still continue on attainment of mandatory retirement age of 60. So when you clock 60, you will be going for mandatory retirement, and that mandatory retirement, that is your pension. Also, we have early retirement, whereby if you have continued to work for 20 years, you qualify for early retirement, but this one requires that you need to apply to the Pensions Authority for early retirement, which will be granted by the public service, the responsible permanent secretary, who is the Pensions Authority. Alternatively, early retirement can also be provided when you have attained the age of 45 and you've worked for at least 10 years. So it's also retirement on marriage grounds also provided. We all know previously retirement on marriage grounds was only limited for our female colleagues, but now it has been opened up. Male colleagues also be allowed to retire on marriage grounds, and those who will have served for a continuous period of 5 years will qualify for retirement on marriage grounds, and this is being opened up for both male and females. On compulsory retirement from the service or abolition of office or retrenchment, mean that your post may also be abolished. And once this is abolished, or whether you're retrenched, then you'll also be able to qualify for your pension. Upon death, we all know if you're in active service once you die, you've retired, and your mode of retirement is death. So those who die will also be qualified for a benefit, but the type of benefit will depend on how long they have served. Of course, we all know that when you die in service, we compute your benefits, also compute what we call a death gratuity, and we pay whatever is higher. And this will be illustrated at a later time. Termination of probation appointment. You can also retire when your probation appointments are terminated, but if your probation appointment is terminated, you don't qualify for. But the beauty about the new scheme is that even when your probation appointment is terminated, you qualify for what we call refund of contribution, because on probation you already start contributing the fund. So that's another mode of retirement now. And previously, if your probation was terminated, you don't get a benefit. But under the new scheme, you still qualify for a benefit because you've made some contribution. So you've been entitled some benefit. On retirement from the public service in public interest, if you retired on public interest, you'll get your benefits. On dismissal from service, this is another new introduction by the reform. We all know under the current scheme, if you're dismissed from service, you forfeit all your benefits. But under the new scheme, even a person who is dismissed is still entitled to refund of contribution. So this scheme has introduced what we call refund of contribution, and they'll be entitled to their benefits. Whatever they have contributed will be refunded back unto them because it is their contribution. So that's another introduction by the new scheme. Upon transfer to the other public service member, is by law required to subscribe to another retirement benefit other than the public service pension fund. So if you transfer to other public service, example, you could use if you move to NIRA, if you get an appointment and you transfer to NIRA, and NIRA subscribes to NSSF, then there you'll have retired from us and your benefits will be completed, but it will be paid when your retirement becomes due. Since NIRA is the other public service, you go and work in NIRA. I'm using NIRA as an example. You go and work in NIRA, but when you now qualify for your retirement, you get your benefits under NSSF through NIRA, but you still be able to come back to public service and claim for your benefits under the fund for what you have accumulated when you're contributing and all this. Where an employee resides from service, again, I said earlier that resignation is used not to attract benefits, but under the new reform, those who retire will also entitled to a benefit. When an employee abandons or absconds from service, even when you abscond now, you're still entitled to your refund of contribution. So this reform guarantees benefits. No matter your type of exit, you still be entitled to benefits. But the difference is some benefits are now limited to what we call refund of contribution. For example, if you're dismissed or if you abscond, you can only claim for what you contributed. And this will be computed. This will be done by the fund. Pension benefits and guarantee on attainment of mandatory age of 60, you get it. When you retire mandatorily at 60, you'll be put on pension. Now, pension is the monthly payments that will guarantee for 15 years or plus if you live longer. On continuous service, for those on early retirement, 20 years or 45 years, with 10 years continuous service, also they get their pension, so they'll get the monthly. On retirement on marriage grounds, after serving for 10 years, minimum of 10 years. So those who also retire, if you retire on marriage grounds and you have served for a minimum of 10 years, you also qualify for a pension. On compulsory retirement from service or abolition of office, regardless of years of service. Now, be keen that if your position has been abolished, the number of years you've served will not be a factor to qualify for a pension. No matter the years, you will automatically qualify for a pension. Upon death, having served or contributed for 10 years. Now, if you've served for less than 10 years, you're entitled to the death gratuity, which is a one-off. But once you've served for more than 10 years, you qualify for a pension, which is the annuity, which should be paid monthly. So some will ask, how will a dead person benefit? But of course, you all know that under survivor's benefits, your beneficiary can come and claim, and the procedure will be illustrated at a later point. Upon transfer to other public service, where a member is by law required to subscribe to the other public service, and the member has served. So what this means that if you again move to a government parastatal, for example, what we call the other public service, if before you move to that, government agency, you had worked for a minimum of 10 years, you'll also qualify for a pension. However, if you had not worked for 10 years, you qualify for one-off, which will also be paid unto you. So benefits, so service gratuity, this is paid, this is service gratuity equivalent to 5 times the annual pension and is paid once and in full. This is paid in the event of employee retiring after serving to the fund for less than 10 years, qualifying period. Marriage gratuity granted to employee who retires after serving for less than 10 years. Marriage gratuity equivalent to 5 times. So if in marriage you've less than 10 years, you'll also qualify for your marriage gratuity. But for those who serve for them more than 10 years, they'll also qualify for a pension. And I hope at this point we are clearly understand the difference between the committed pension gratuity, the one-off payment, and the pension, which is a monthly payment. And then return of contribution, I talked about. This reform introduces what we call return of contribution under when a person exists under certain circumstances. Notable, if your probation appointment has been terminated, your appointment on probation but is terminated, you qualify for refund of contribution. Secondly, if you're dismissed from service, you also qualify for refund of your contribution. Absconding from service, resignation, these are now modes which initially never qualified you for return for any benefit, but currently the reform, under the reform, you qualify for refund of contribution or return of contribution. Death gratuity, where a public officer dies before serving or contributing for 10 years also. So if you have served for less than 10 years, death gratuity, you paid death gratuity, which is 3 times your annual pension, as committed. So meaning that, but as we say that if a person dies and they have served for more than 10 years, then instead of getting a gratuity, they may get a pension. But this will be computed, and the policy provides that both will be computed and whatever is higher will be paid. Key features, what are the key features of this reform? There's now, we have a regulatory authority, Uganda Retirement Benefits Regulatory Authority, UBRA, has a mandate of supervising this fund, just like any other pension fund. The Ministry of Public Service still has a role of policy review and monitoring. As I said, this fund is going to be independent, but the Ministry of Public Service still remains the pension authority, so they have the mandate of policy reviews and monitoring. Current pensioners or survivors shall remain the responsibility of the Ministry of Public Service. What this means is those who already retired will not move to this fund. So meaning that the Ministry of Public Service and the votes will still be responsible to ensure these people are paid. So we are not going to close the pension function in the votes. You still have a liability of those who retired before this reform, and you continue paying them until the last pension in your vote is paid. Actual evaluation estimates that the last pension under the old scheme will be paid in the year 2084. And that means that, those who retired under the old scheme still have their pension guaranteed, like up to when they die. And at the moment, we even have pensions who are more than 100 years. So mean that when you retire at 60, you can actually earn pension for 40 plus years if you're alive. So votes take note that you still have a responsibility of ensuring that those who are already on our pensions payroll will continue to be paid, and you continue budgeting for them until all of them are paid their last pension at death or when they clock the 15 years. Accrued pension rights from current pension, calculated at the time of inception of the new pension bond is issued. I need to give a bit of explanation here. One of the key questions normally is, what happens to my previous pension? Of course, we know this reform has come when many of us have worked for a number of years. So the question is, do we forfeit our previous benefits? The answer is no. So your benefits will be computed. When we start contributions, all your benefits before the start of contribution will be computed, and you'll be issued what they call a retirement bond. The government of Uganda will issue a retirement bond, whereby the value of your package under the old scheme will be given to you in terms of a retirement bond. However, you will not be given your benefits immediately when the scheme starts. Your retirement bond is simply your money it will be kept issued by Bank of Uganda. And at the time of your retirement, the fund will now be able to redeem your bond, retirement bond, meaning that when you retire, your benefits under the old scheme will be redeemed by the fund. Then the fund additional computer benefits under the new reform, and all this will be joined and then given unto you. So meaning that no one is going to lose any benefits that accumulated under the previous reform. And I just want to make this very, very clear, because that is one of the worries of some people. How do I forfeit the 30 years, 20 years I've worked? No one is forfeiting anything. You get all your benefits both in the old scheme and the new scheme for those who have worked in both. We shall be reporting to Parliament with copies of the Minister of Public Service and Finance. So that's our reporting mechanism. Date of commencement, July 2026 is when the fund will start, but contribution will commence in 2027. Someone will ask what happens between 2026 and 2027. There's a lot of work. First of all, enrollment with the fund. Members will be enrolled, so we shall go around the country to ensure that all eligible members enrolled into the fund. Data is cleaned up and uploaded into the fund system, so that come 1st of July 2027, the fund is ready to receive your contribution. The votes also ready to contribute. You know, there's an element of contribution, and at the next financial year, there's no budget provided, so you cannot be asked to contribute when there's no budget provision. But 1st of July, we shall be ready and shall be able to contribute. Minimum pension. Another key feature of this reform is introduction of a minimum pension. As I told you earlier, currently we have a pension which is earning 5,000 shillings. The question will be, how reasonable is 5,000? But now, one of the key features of this reform is that there is now introduction of a minimum pension. Meaning that if at any point when you retire and we compute and realize that your monthly pension, your pension is less than 25% of your salary at retirement, then this will be adjusted to a quarter of your salary, or 25%, the two took the same. So this means that no one should be able to get less than 25% of their current salary when they retire. So this introduction. However, those where a minimum pension is provided, there will be no commutation. What this means is that if your pension by computation is less than 25%, it will be adjusted 25%, but at this point you not qualify for a committed pension gratuity. Now all your money will come in form of an annuity. Minimum qualifying period has been maintained at 10 years, so mean that to qualify for a pension, minimum years so be 10 years. So what has changed? Governance, institutional reform, establishment of a fund, separate from the sponsor. The sponsor of this reform is government, but this fund is going to be independent from government and operate independently, will not depend on the consolidated fund, but it will be managed its own funds, invest its own funds through the board of trustees. Another key reform is the pre-funding, introduction of the payroll contribution of 15%. So each of us will make a contribution of 15%, whereby you as an employee will make the 5%, but your employer who is government will also make the 10% for you. Those who understand how NSF works, this is similar to that. And then another is social security guarantees under all circumstances. Every member will be entitled to a benefit. Once you're enrolled and you've joined this fund and you've made a contribution, you already qualify for a benefit. However, it may not be a pension if you don't work for the period required. But as I said earlier, even if you joined on probation, you work for only 6 months and your probation is terminated, you qualify for a refund of contribution or return of contribution. So that's another. Now the social security guarantee that no one will walk empty-handed once they've joined the fund. Introduction of a minimum pension. I talked about that for address the issue of adequacy. One of the challenges with the current scheme is that what the formula gives you is what we give you. And it may be small, but that is it. But we're saying that whatever the formula gives you should be above 25%. And in case it's not, then adjustments will be made to ensure that at least you get 25% of your wage at retirement. Periodic review of the pension indexation based on performance of the fund as declared by the Board of Trustees as another reform. That we all know that currently our pension is indexed against inflation or price, but also there's an additional introduction of now indexation based on performance of the fund. Meaning that if the fund performs very well and makes good returns, then that return will also be used for indexation of the pension. Another thing, this reform provides for optional membership for government department, agencies, boards, and commissions, increased participation. Now, there's optional membership whereby a new member in a new government agency can opt to subscribe to our pension fund, or instead of their other existing pension funds. And this will, of course, increase our membership. Assuming another government agency comes tomorrow and then they say they want to belong to public pension fund, that should be in addition to those in the mainstream public service. So that improves on the membership. A revision of the pension fraction from 1 out of 500 to 1 out of 600. The accrual rate in the old scheme has been 2.4, but this has been reduced to 2.0. Meaning that the reform now reduces your accrual from 2.4 to 0.0, so you have a reduction of about 0.4%. Preservation of the accrued benefits of the pre-reform period. And as I said, no one is losing any of the benefits they have accumulated under the old reform, under the old scheme. This will be preserved through a pension retirement bond, which will be issued and redeemed at the time you retire. Just for clarity, you will not access this money immediately you retire, but this money will be accessed when you actually retire. Some of us still have a number of years to retire, so this will be kept. But when you retire, actually, then you will be able to access this. Current pension has to remain under the old scheme to manage under Ministry of Public Service and also the ministries, department, and agencies. So the current pensioners are not going to be moved into this scheme because it's a contributed scheme. So since they never contributed, they can't be moved into the scheme. Management of the fund by board of trustees and other service providers such as managers, custodians, actuaries, auditors. Separation of government governance roles provides prudential management of the assets of the fund. So the board is going to be typically independent under no directive of anyone. They will be independent and make independent decisions that may be advised by the technical people. Guaranteed pension through a formula and payment till death to assured members of the Social Security Fund. I talked about this earlier. Prudential investment of contributions to ensure fund fulfills the commitments to meet pension by formula till death. Now, government has already committed that your pension will be provided till death. So for us, for this fund to ensure this is done, they have to prudentially invest your contributions to ensure that this money can be guaranteed till death. Optional membership for employees who will be remaining with less than 5 years, as I said. Those who will be left less than 5 years will have an option of either to choose to move to the fund or to remain in the old scheme. But those with more than 5 years, your movement will be compulsory. Compulsory salary increase of 5% in the year of inception to ensure employees maintain the same pay levels. Now, this is very important, and I want us to take very keen attention because we get a lot of questions in this area. One of the fears of many civil servants about this reform, because as I told you, we have been doing this exercise for the whole of this year. Now, many people are excited about this reform, but their bit of question has always been, you are now going to start deducting my salary. It means my salary is going to come down, and yet I have loans, I have this and that. But with this, the government has committed to provide a compulsory salary increase of 5% at the year of inception. What this means is, in July 2027, when we start implementing this reform, all salaries of those who are already in service will be reviewed by 5%. Meaning that even the 5% you're contributing will not ideally come from you. Why we're doing this is wanting to maintain your pay levels. Meaning that if in July, in June next year, 2027, your salary your net salary is 600. In July, we don't want this reform to bring your net salary downwards. So that difference of 5%, which is supposed to be your contribution, will be maintained by a compulsory salary increase. But I don't want to call this a salary enhancement. What I'm not calling it is because you're not going to have this enhancement in your bank accounts. It is simply a compulsory increment that we don't want you to have your pay levels lowered because of a reform. So I hope this is clear. No one is going to have a less net salary because of this reform. The reform is coming with a compulsory increment, the year of inception. So No one should be worried that their net salary is going to come down. Maybe their deduction are going to exceed 50%. No, this has been catered for, and this is going to happen. Then introduction of new benefits, refund of contribution in case of dismissal, abscondment, even termination of probationary appointments will all be, you will be entitled to refund of contribution. Meaning that even if you're dismissed, even if you abscond, you just go and we don't know where you are, you can later come and say, it is true I absconded, but I worked for 10 years, I contributed. So the fund will be able to look at your contributions and refund your contributions back to you. Introduction of AGM for members. As I said, the current scheme has no AGM, there's no ownership. There's no proper ownership by members. There's no accountability. Why? Because even the monies you're putting, you're not contributing any monies, and you cannot tell us to tell you what is being done with the monies because the condition is not there. But because this reform counts with contribution for members, when I say you need to know how your money is being used, how your money has been invested, how many profits have been made by the fund. This will be declared at the AGM, which will be done annually. And you'll be, as members, as key stakeholders in this fund, you'll be able to attend this AGM and participate actively. Introduction. So that is for accountability and declaration of any changes. Whatever happens will be communicated to you during the AGMs. Introduction of series of regulatory reforms like licenses by UBRA. As I say, UBRA is now the regulator, so it will be licensed, it will be able to license even the fund. It has licensed the fund, but even licenses the members and periodical compliance reporting. The fund will also periodically report to UBRA about compliance, to reports to Auditor General's Office and Parliament. Capital Markets Authority also continue to monitor since these funds will be invested. The mandate of monitoring that will be the Capital Markets Authority. So there is really a lot that has come in, and all this is to ensure that your savings, your contributions are safeguarded, and no one can really take any of your contributions off you. So benefits, better services as a result of the budget relief. Now, one of the government is going to benefit from this reform because as a result of this reform, government will no longer have to budget. Of course, as I said, the budgets for the old pensioners will continue, but this will be reducing. If you look at our budgets for pension and gratuity, it has been increasing because every year we're adding new pensioners onto our pensions payroll. But under the new reform, the fund will now take over management of pensions, except for those who have retired under the old scheme. So meaning that government's commitment to this budget for pension will be reducing and eventually goes to zero when all the pensioners under the old scheme are paid. So this will relieve government for them to concentrate on other areas. It will also reduce the borrowings of government due to huge capital costs for the sector. So this is going to be a very big relief for the government, which shall no longer depend on the consolidated fund, except initially for those who retired under the old scheme, but eventually we shall not need anything, any pensions from the consolidated fund unless the other issues where government comes as a sponsor. Members, public officers, the formula has been retained. So your benefits are still formula based. And so you'll be guaranteed pension benefits under the fully funded defined benefit scheme. So they will use the formula, you get your time until death, and there's a cushion by government. I know someone will say, what if there's a shortfall? Government will provide that cushion. Government is the sponsor of this reform. Now, another benefit is timely payment of benefits to retirees as funds shall be readily available and not tied to GDP growth. You know, the consolidated fund depends on the GDP growth. Are we able to collect more revenue and all this and that? But for the fund, it will no longer depend on the consolidated fund. And the beauty, the fund will also know who is retiring when. So all necessary arrangements will be made to ensure that by the time you retire, your money is readily available, and expectation that when you retire, like today, tomorrow, you should be able to access your benefits because it will be readily available and the fund will be aware that you're retiring. Represented on the board of trustees from accountability. Various ministries, public service will be represented in the board. Public service, Ministry of Gender, Ministry of Local Government, Ministry of Finance, Ugandan Employers Association. So there's a lot of transparency going to happen because all stakeholders are represented at board level. Safety of members' benefits also guaranteed. no one will be able to invest in these funds because of all the checks and balances that are being put in place. Government, it builds trust and confidence in the social protection scheme. Fiscal sustainability means government can now concentrate on other productive areas of the economy, reduce fiscal burden and availability of capital for borrowing. One of the things also, government borrows money from both locally and internationally. But one of the things also boasts is we'll be able to lend to government. So meaning that we shall be able to lend money to government, and government will borrow at an interest. So shall be able to borrow by the treasury bonds and bills and all that. So meaning that we'll be one of the funders of government, and government can never fail to pay because government is there and will always be there. Economy, increase in saving in the economy is there, increase in supply of funds will reduce on the cost of capital because our, government sometimes goes to the extent of borrowing very expensively from commercial banks, but we'll be able to provide options of effective borrowing to government. Interest rates on borrowings will reduce, leading to private sector profitability, growth, and creation of jobs. Increase and productivity in the economy. The economy will grow as a result of this reform. Will contribute to the growth of the. So, what's the implementation plan? We are winding up by 11, so we're now moving towards the winding. One is the Public Service Pension Fund Bill has been enacted and implementation of reform activities commenced. For the last year and this year, we have been implementing pre-reform activities. Implementation of the pre-reform we have done. Part of this sensitization is pre-reform activity. Once sensitization is started, by the time we start the collection, no one will be able to say, why do I see this on my place list? Why am I contributing this? Everyone should be in the know. 2026-27 next financial, which is starting in about a week or two. Commencement of the Pensions Act 2025. The appointment of the board, inaugural board has already been done. They have been inducted, so they are ready to start work on 1st of July. Minister of Public Service is also going to second staff from the public service for the interim. Now, this secondment is not only for people with the Minister of Public Service. We have also written to agencies and other departments of government to second staff for the interim management. But of course, we also expect eventually, once the board starts work, they'll be able to take over the recruitment and advertise and be able to recruit as it's one of their mandates. Financial year 2027-28, the other financial year, that's why we shall commence collection of contribution. That's when you start contributing. And one of the things I want to remind all votes, responsible officers and HRs is that this year is when you now start making contributions. So ensure that next financial year, as you do your budgeting for the other financial year, you budget for the 10% of government, but also budget for the 5%, because as we said in the initial year of inception, the 5% will be made by government. So as we provided that cushion. So appointment of the fund managers, custodians, actuaries, and other services in accordance with the Act and UBRA Act. So responsibilities. Minister of Public Service, one of the key responsibilities was established on this fund, and I think they've done a commendable job. The fund has been established, the board members have been inaugurated, the board of trustees, this comment has been done. So that was responsibility, and this has been achieved. Appointment of the board, including determination of the terms and conditions, has been done. Approval of regulations, policy guidelines to the service and pension fund, as well as supervision of the public service pension fund. This remains a mandate of this ministry. Working in collaboration with the appointing authority to determine terms and conditions of service of the members of the scheme. So we shall work together. The ministry will continue to work together with the appointing authorities to determine terms, because the terms ultimately have an implication on benefits and benefit payments. The Permanent Secretary Minister of Public Service remains the pensions authority. So, and we'll continue to handle that. Coordinating the registration of members and collection of contributions. So, Minister of Public Service still has a mandate to ensure that members are registered. Whoever is newly recruited will be has a mandate to ensure that they are registered. They will not be registered by public service, but coordinating and ensure that the contributions are collected is also a mandate. Finance has a very big mandate. One is role is monetary policy and ensuring compliance with the Public Finance Management Act. Budget allocation financing, as I said, the finance is committed to provide funding for the first 3 years. And this will be done by budget providing funding for the startup activities and accrue pension liabilities and pension for the past service. So finance will continue to provide money for those who retire before this reform. That's one of their roles. Technical support through board representation and supervision of the public service pension fund as well as development of the investment policy. So finance also is represented at the board level. UBRA, as I said, is responsible with the authority to supervise this. So they will continue to provide licensing, supervision, and regulation of the public service pension fund. Undertakes trustee certification. All trustees are to be certified and offer trainings and certification by UBRA. Advising the pension fund on the various aspects, including asset classes for investments of pension assets and other assets related to pension fund management. Capital Markets Authority has also a role to play, regulates the pension market and supervise the pension investment of the pension funds, issue licenses to fund managers, entity responsible for investment of pension fund, provide technical support in the development of investment policies and other matters related to investment of the pension funds. So this is also another role of the Capital Markets Authority. Parliament of Uganda will continue to provide the oversight role in the operations of the fund through annual reports and reports prepared by Auditor General. As I said, this fund will be audited by Auditor General, and their reports will go to Parliament, which provides oversight role. Enactment of laws for the pension fund and pension benefits sector in general. You know, there's plenty of enactment of laws invested in Parliament, so Parliament continue. The Public Service Pension Act was enacted by Parliament, and they continue to make, and even in future, when there will be need to review this law, it will still be the responsibility of Parliament. Office of the Auditor General will continue to do the annual audits of the fund directly or indirectly through appointed. So the Office of the Auditor General can either do this directly or they can also appoint a service provider to audit the fund on their behalf. Ministry department agencies, you have a responsibility of facilitating registration of members, ensure all your members are registered for the pension fund, and ensuring all the new members who come in also get timely registered. Budgeting and remitting the employee contributions to the fund. You also have a responsibility to ensure that budgets are provided and employee contributions are remitted whenever need. Every month you remit, and there's a penalty for non-remittance or late remittance. So you should ensure that these remittance will be done timely. We are provided a timeline that by the 15th of the subsequent month, contributions of the previous month should all be remitted, and there's a penalty for that. So and this is all to do with the health of the fund. We don't want a fund where a local government has not remitted for 1 year or this and that. That affects the health of the fund. So we are going to ensure that is done. No question of the pension fund on change of employment terms. Now, for example, if employee A in local government B has a promotion, it is the mandate of that local government to notify the pension fund of that change. So you need to notify them about appointments on promotion, salary changes, leave without pay, and all that interdiction. They need to be notified. Filing returns on member records, contribution, collections, remittance, and other related matters to the fund. Budgeting and payment of pensions for pensioners under the previous service. Managing claims of unpaid benefits from the previous past service. Budgeting, payment, and accountability. Forwarding application for retirement benefits to employees leaving the service to the public service pension fund. So if people have applied and have been granted early retirement and all this, you also need to forward that application to the pension benefits. You need to forward the application for their benefits payment for those who will be leaving the public service pension fund. Key messages: the ministry has constituted a team of experts from across government to develop regulations, policies, framework, guidelines, systems, and all that. Under the public service pension fund, benefits payment does not depend on the consolidated fund, as clearly alluded to. Commencement of contributions is 1st of July 2027. So as we start next month, there will be no contribution until 2027. Retired officers will continue to be responsibility of government through ministry, department, and agencies until the last pension is paid. And as I said out, actually projection is the last pension will be paid at 2086, 87. Sound very far, but that's the life expectancy. So we expect that the last time they'll be paid. Pension rights under the unfunded non-qualified are protected through a pension bond, so you don't lose any benefits. And the formula has been revised downwards by 0.4%. Public officers who served under the previous service will, however, receive more benefits under this fund. We shall have more engagement where we shall practically demonstrate to you. We know that we are all busy, so we don't want to take a lot of your time. We have committed that every time this sensation will be for only 2 hours. We start at 9 and we stop at 11. So government will provide the 5%, as I said. At inception, no one should expect any salary deduction because of the reform, but your contribution is still coming through that. The pension fund is projected to grow by 1.3 trillion in 1 year. So meaning that in the year of when we start making contribution, we shall contribute 1.3 trillion. And this will be a bit higher if more people are added onto the salary enhancement schedule. And 6.5 trillion in 15 years. So meaning that we shall be the biggest pension fund in the country. The fund will be self-sustaining from 2028-29 and operate without support from the Causeray Fund. Now, the support from Causeray Fund stops in 2027, 28, 29. The fund will be able to sustain itself. The reform is meant to address the issue of liquidity and fiscal sustainability problem, exponential increase in the fiscal burden of the non-contributions of the scheme, which is currently payable. So the key messages are here. Way forward, update the human capital management system with accurate data, because the fund is going to get the information from the system, map employees' eligibility, incorporate salary enhancement, audit past service liabilities, monitor contribution timelines, conduct in-house workshop, distribute retirement bond statements. As I said, each one will need to get their retirement bond. Pre-retirement trainings will continue to be done. And as part of this, the pension fund should be introduced to the members. Guidance will be issued to the thank you so much, members. We'll basically come to the end of the presentation. I hope you're able to get, but my last quotation was about from the former U.S. Secretary for Labor, who said taxpayers should demand that their states honestly assess pension plans, accurately measure their assets and liabilities, and take steps to provide fair benefits to public employees to avoid taxpayers' liability. What this means is that government will no longer continue to be a liability to taxpayers. Why? Because our pension will in future come from the fund. We shall not go to the consolidated fund. We shall not be able to, because as I said, everyone pays tax, including the private sector who may not be a beneficiary of this reform. So thank you so much for listening. I hope this has been helpful. And for the questions, I believe most questions have been answered either through my presentation, or I also had my colleagues who have been responding to these questions. Time check is 5 minutes. I need to know whether there are any other questions. Can I look at the question? I'll try to look at if there are any other. My colleagues, as I said, have been responding, so I'm not going to repeat the responses. Okay, great. Most questions are answered. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let me look at some of them. what will be the source of funds for the fund? As I said, the fund's main source of funds, actually the main source of funds are your contributions. So your contribution together with the contributions from government on your behalf is what the funds will use to invest. So there's no other contribution apart from that. You will not use your NSSF number. Someone is asking, no. The fund is going to provide its own fund. We're independent from NSSF, so we cannot use the NSSF fund numbers. However, for those who are already on NSSF and still serving, you may not enroll on this scheme. But those who may join for the new entities which may come on board, then they may choose to join. But otherwise, we are not going to use the NSSF numbers. Who have been in this service before, I've talked about your benefits under the pre-reform service is guaranteed. You'll be issued retirement bonds, and this contains what you have, what you accrued under the old scheme, and nothing is lost. Thank you. What else is there? Can I move forward? Presentation will be shared. How this will be done. Sorry, those who lost the audio, but I hope you're able to get back and able to get the presentation. But we're going to share this. There was a request for you to register, so you registered with your emails, and secretariat are going to ensure that everyone who registered gets this. Thank you very much. That's an appreciation from Juliet there, Amanya. Thank you, and I think other questions have been answered. But as I said, thank you very much. Not run out of time, but I'm going to allow maybe about 3 physical questions. So can you raise up your hand? And we're going to allow maybe 3 questions. Just panning questions, not repetitions of the questions that are there, but we're going to allow you to do that. Ian, Mr. Abdu, who? The first one is Secretary. Please, can you raise your question, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Presenter. My name is Secretary Thaddeus. My question is just simple. You talked of the information that we need to update with HR, and I wanted clarity on what key information that we needed to update. Is it like the NSSF usual information that needs to be updated, or thank you?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me get all the questions I responded. Yeah, Noah. Noah, please, Mr. Noah, come to the question, please. Hello? Noah is still there? Okay, let's go to the next one. This one. Abdu? Hello? Tusime Rogers, can we have your question, please? Tusime? We can't hear you, Tusime. Your mic is on, but we can't hear you. Is there another question? Tusime seems not to be on. Tusime seems to be speaking. Please,
The user went to inquire about a minimum 10 years. I wanted to know when does that minimum 10 years starts when? Is it after they being enrolled on the system, or you calculate the years with someone as system before this new scheme?
Okay. Thank you, Soma. Any other question before you respond? Okay, thank you, members. Let me respond to 2 questions, and thanks for the keen attention. I believe that we're able to understand this fully, but number 1 was about which information do you need to update? Now, there is no introduction of a new information yet. We are simply saying that this reform will depend a lot on accurate data. For example, I'll use an example, date of birth. We still have entities where we have staff who don't have clear dates of birth. So what we are saying is we want the accurate date of birth, because we keep getting letters, people saying that dates of birth are wrongly captured, this and that. But you see, the fund will depend on this, the date of birth which I'll have enrolled on the system to know when, because the fund has to project when, for example, John is retiring. And the fund can only do that projection using your date of birth. Meaning that if your date of birth is not correct, then you're already posing a challenge to the fund that they will do a wrong projection, because the fund is going to base its projection on whatever you have put on the system. So our request here is you need to ensure both HRs, but even individuals, how accurate is your information? Through HCM, you can now access your, for instance, your biodata. And if you see that your date of birth has been wrongly captured and you have reason to believe it's wrongly captured, then you can seek the attention of your HR and have this corrected. And if the date of birth, want to know what was the circumstance under which the date of birth was wrongly noted. So we want this to be done. That is all the information should be accurate. There's no new information yet, but all that information mainly about what is your salary now, everything should be accurate. Because if you have any inaccurate data, then it affects the fund. Is your salary correctly paid? For example, if you're a senior HR and you're being paid as a HRO, that's already affecting, because the fund is going to make a very wrong projection of your benefits. So that is why we say we need very, very accurate data. So that's what we need to clean up. And then the minimum years, minimum 10 years. Pension, qualifying period for pension is 10 years. And this 10 years is not limited to when the fund starts. Even those who started before, as long as you move to the fund, your previous period is still part of the qualifying period. For those who, for example, for those who joined service 5 years before this reform, meaning that you just need another additional 5 years in the reform to qualify, because we are not going to, that it doesn't mean the reform will start counting your years from zero. So the 10 years start when you join service, not when the reform starts. It may be for those who join after the reform, yes, but that is why we're providing for all your benefits under the old scheme. And the two will be combined and paid unto you. So no one should be worried that this reform is going to take away benefits in the previous, or you have to start the 10 years afresh. No. The 10 years start from when you join service, even when you join 10 years, 20 years. Now, for example, many people have qualified already. They already have more than 10 years of service. So that will not be taken away from you because there's a reform. No, that will not be done. Maybe Jalia, it's not. Jalia, can we have your question? I'll take 2 more questions because we started a bit late and then we closed. Jalia? Jalia?
Thank you so much. This is really a good initiative, but to me, as a new person in service, I would suggest that we all need this fund. I would suggest, why don't you at least make reforms and make it mandatory for all of us that immediately a person is confirmed into service, they immediately start contributing to that fund, because when shall we wait for 10 years, then we start contributing for the fund, because me, I'm a new entrant. So I would suggest we think about that immediately someone is confirmed into service, we immediately start on the fund, the contributions, so that at least within that year, someone has something to start up.
Okay. Thanks so much, Jalia. Let me take the last from Roger and then I respond.
Come back again.
Yes, Roger.
Talked about the roles of the minister of government and us. Notify any change, maybe I'm promoted by salary, scale has changed. Me as an employer, how do I know that this contribution has been made? The pension is what?
Sorry, Roger, your voice is breaking. How do you know what?
How do I know that the changes in my salary and my promotions have been communicated?
Or how it's been communicated?
The scheme
Okay.
board.
All right. Thank you very much. I get your question. Thank you
What
so
do I
much,
know?
Rogers and Jelly. Yeah, I've got your question. Okay, Bernard, our last question for today. Bernard? Bernard?
Yes, good morning. Am I heard?
Yes, please. Very loud and clear.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the great presentation. You've mentioned several things, including there being a board of trustees, investing the funds that are contributed by members. But I haven't heard whether from these investments, the contributors will be from time to time earning some bit of interest on their funds that have been invested. Some bit of clarification on that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the question. So let me now respond to these three questions before we close. Question one was from Jalia. And Jalia, thank you very much for your concern. However, I just want to further clarify that you suggested that people should be contributing as soon as they get confirmed. But I want to say that actually it's people start contributing immediately appointed. Even when you're on probation, Jalia, you said you're new in service, I don't know how long you are, but immediately we start contribution, you have to start contributing. So from your first salary, we shall start deducting the contributions for the fund. Government start contributing for you. So it doesn't have to wait for confirmation even. And it doesn't work for 10 years. Maybe the clarification is 10 years is when you qualify for a pension. But even if you don't make the 10 years and you've contributed, say for 2 years, and for any reason you've left, you're still entitled what they call, for example, let me say if your probation appointment was terminated, God forbid, but just assuming it is, and then you qualify for what you call refund of contribution or return of contribution. So what that means is, Jalia, even when the day you get your first salary is when your contribution starts. It doesn't have to wait for confirmation. So this is just to clearly put it that contributions are not tied to confirmation. So that is, I think, it's clear. Number two, Rogers, you talked about the salary changes. As I said clearly, your salary changes must be communicated to the fund. And you rightfully ask the question, how will you know? Now, the fund is developing a system to continuously update its members. And in this system, you're able to know whether even your payments have been remitted. So you'll be able to get notifications either by email or by SMS. You'll be notified at an appropriate time what channel they're going to use. But you'll be able to know whether contribution has been made for you this month and whether the right one was made. And you have every right to go and complain to your HR or people responsible for salary management in your entity of why they contributed less. For example, if you got a promotion, you're now earning the new salary, you've been promoted, and the contribution are still going as the old one, you have a right to go and ask them. And they have to adjust your payments to the latest. So you have every channel to get to know that. We also think about innovation. Maybe there will be a portal where you'll be able to review this. But I want to make it clear that it doesn't mean that what you contribute is what you get. It depends unless you go through a mode where there's a refund of contribution. But if your mode of exit will not be refund of contribution, then it will still be a formula based. But for the health of this fund and for the sustainability of this fund, it's still very important that you need to know that remittances are being made. So the fund will also independently be communicating with its members about that. And then lastly, on the issue of interest, as I said, yes, the fund, your contributions will be invested to just not be idle in a bank account, but you'll be invested through various things, either by government bonds or any other. And there's a clear guidance of how the board of trustees can invest your funds. However, interest will not be paid to you as interest. But remember, I also say that revalidation of your pension will be based on both price and performance of the fund. Meaning that if the fund performs and there's significant returns from investments, then those returns can be used to revalidate your pension, to index your pension. So meaning that you still benefit, but it won't be like what NSSF does, whereby they declare and then each one gets an interest. No. But this one, we shall be indexing or revalidating your pension to take into consideration the changes both from the value of money in terms of inflation, but also the performance of the fund. So we all stand to benefit from this, and this is a reform for all of us. And I hope we have all appreciated that there's nothing hidden in this reform, but all of us need this reform, and it's for our own good. And at this point, allow me to thank all of you. We started 10 minutes late today, and it's exactly 10 past 11, and I want to keep our tradition. From me to you, I want to, on behalf of myself as a presenter and the team behind, I work with the team which has been making this possible. I want to thank you very, very, very much for your time, for your attention. We hope you're able to get something. But also our next webinar will be on Tuesday next week. Please encourage all your staff to attend this webinar so that everyone is informed, no one is left behind. Thank you so much. God bless you all. So I can now